All right, this is going to be a slightly different video. I charged my phone up enough a little bit. But last week when I was out here, I was approached by one of the staff out here. He's been working here for 54 years, he says. So he told me a few stories of some of the, I don't want to say famous people out here, but the more well-known or people with more interesting stories, I guess. And he told me about this one individual. So I finally found his grave, and his name is Frank J Coppola. From what I've been able to research, and I'll probably do a voiceover for this to get all the information and details correctly. But Frank here, I don't want to talk badly about the dead in a cemetery, but not a great person. Frank here was a Portsmouth police officer back in the 60s, I believe, and didn't do too well. Apparently he was hot-headed, so he eventually got fired from the force, or either basically forced to resign. These are his parents. Yeah, Vincent A. and Mary Rose. And his sister died young, or fairly young, Rosemary. But yeah, so Frank ended up murdering someone. Like I said, I'm going to do a voiceover for this. And back in 1982, I think it was August 18th, if I remember correctly, he was not the first person, but he was the first person in Virginia since the 60s to be sent to the electric chair, which is pretty crazy to me. I don't know how many people have since been sent to the electric chair here in Virginia, but yeah.
Death in the electric chair for a crime he committed in this house off J. Clyde Morris Boulevard in Newport News. It was April 22, 1978. Coppola and two others came to this house to rob used car dealer Peyton Hatchell and his wife Muriel. Muriel, however, was alone in the house at the time. She let the trio inside. They were after money and were convinced Mrs. Hatchell had it. She was tied to a bed and beaten to death. Her husband, who came home while the attackers were still inside, was beaten too, but survived. They escaped the scene in his car, but within 2 weeks, 4 people were under arrest. Willard Robinson, then and now Commonwealth Attorney of Newport News, says it was an awful crime.
The brutality and the premeditated planning for the robbery and the beating, I think anyone would categorize it as a brutal, horrible crime.
The first to be tried was Joel Miltier. A Newport News jury found him guilty of capital murder, but sentenced him not to death, but to life in prison. Donna Mills, who testified against the other defendants, was also found guilty. She too was sent to prison for life. Karen Coppola, Frank's ex-wife, who drove the getaway car, received 21 years behind bars. Frank, a former Portsmouth policeman who attended Old Dominion University for a year and a half on a basketball scholarship, was, like Miltier, found guilty of capital murder. His trial in September 1978 took nearly a week. The testimony filled several volumes. Coppola pleaded not guilty, saying he wasn't at the scene. But Commonwealth Attorney Robinson convinced the jury that it was Coppola who masterminded the crime. It was Mrs. Hatchell's primary assailant, and therefore should be executed.
The death penalty is geared toward the one who does the killing, and that is a category I think that Mr. Coppola fit in.
The jury agreed. Coppola appealed his sentence to both state and federal courts and could have continued that process. But suddenly, this past April, he fired his attorney, Augustus Aninas of Norfolk, saying he had decided to forego all further legal challenges. So on August 10th, in less than a month, Frank Coppola is scheduled to die in the electric chair. Or will he? We'll look deeper tomorrow.
I have lived a full life. I mean, that's the bottom line. I've experienced things that some people will never experience, you know, that they'll never have the benefit of experiencing the things I have.
The voice is that of Frank Coppola, recorded at the state penitentiary in Richmond 4 days before his scheduled execution. He was speaking to columnist Larry Bonco, who corresponded with the convicted killer for 2 years and was rewarded with an exclusive interview. Bonco spoke to Coppola 3 times over his final 5 days, the last Tuesday night just hours before he was to die. Bonco was amazed at Coppola's composure.
I talked to him on the telephone. I said, it's 8, whatever it was, something 37. I said, this guy's going to be dead in 2 hours. He's going to be dead, and he's talking to me in this calm manner. That was really, I put the phone down, and I said, my God, this is incredible.
Coppola said his family was behind his decision to die, although it took time to get his brother to fall in line.
My brother, when he first approached me, he wrote me a letter, and he was very despondent. You know, he said, I don't want to see you die. You know, I love you, and I don't want to see you die. And he implied, he never said, but he implied that he would try to do something, you know, when the time came. So I wrote him back, and I explained to him, I said, you know, physiologically, we're the closest 2 people on earth. But I told him, I said, even though we're physiologically close, I had always thought that our relationship was based on respect. You know, and apparently you don't respect me if you're going to go against my wishes, you know. And he wrote me back and he apologized.
The 38-year-old former policeman adamantly denied brutally beating Muriel Hatchell to death in her home here 4 years ago, saying he was not a violent person.
I hate to throw an old pair of shoes away, and I'm a sensitive person. You know, shoes got feelings as far as I'm concerned. So who am I to preponderate my bulk on somebody, you know?
Despite that, Coppola said he wanted to die, that continued life in prison would be a waste.
I can't find any justification for spending 4 years, a little over 4 years on death row. How in the hell could I justify spending the rest of my natural life in prison?
Bonco says he thinks Coppola was on a power trip.
That he was controlling his own destiny, that I will decide what time I will die. I will tell the world that I'm dying at this time. And the ultimate power, controlling your own death. And I think that's what it was all about.
Bonco's last chat with Coppola ended ironically. It was 8:30 Tuesday night, and it appeared at the time that the Supreme Court would allow the execution to be delayed.
If it comes down and it's postponed, and you want to call me back around 11, 12 to talk about it, you can't. I mean, I'll be up.
All right, hey, that's solid. That's solid. I'll do that.
The call never came because at 11:27 p.m., Frank Coppola was dead. This is Joel Rubin reporting the Daily News.
Coppola was convicted of murdering a police officer in Virginia on September 26, 1978. Coppola waived all his appeals because he did not want to spend his life in prison and wished to spare his family any further agony. He would be the one put in agony. Death would call Coppola on August 10, 1982. The media was not allowed to attend the execution, but Coppola's attorney would describe the gruesome scene. The first 55-second jolt of electricity wasn't successful in killing Coppola. Virginia Department of Correction would give him another 55-second jolt to finish the job. The second jolt reportedly set his head and leg on fire, filling the chamber with smoke and producing a repulsive odor with the sizzling sound of burnt flesh. Coppola would be pronounced dead at 11:27